Hi, welcome to my review of Smile. This is the new horror movie directed by Parker Finn. So this film is following a doctor who witnesses this horrific incident with one of her patients who kills herself right in front of her. But just before this happens, she's explaining all of this really disturbing imagery that she's been seeing. And then after she dies, Rose starts to go through all of the same experiences that this patient was describing. So I saw this in the cinema last night for its opening release here in the UK, and I was actually so surprised by how relentless this film actually was. The way the trailers made it out, it was going to be kind of one of those quite light horror films, you know, a few jumps, a few scares, nothing too serious, and at best I was hoping for a fun time watching it, but I was so surprised by how dark this film actually was. And I must say it's a far better film as well than the trailers let on. I wasn't expecting much from it, but I think this actually, there's a lot to recommend about this film. Sosie Bacon, the lead actress here, she does a really amazing job of portraying this character's mental anguish of what she's going through. You know, this is a character that's dealing with past traumas, so you never know in the film, or she doesn't even know herself, whether this is those past demons coming back to haunt her, or whether this is something more sinister related to the suicide that she's seen. And she's completely isolated from everybody else in her life because nobody will believe her about the things she's experiencing. So having to watch this character go through these frustrations and the anger and upset of being completely isolated in this situation, she did a really amazing job of showing this, and she was extremely convincing in this really demanding role. I love the way they actually used the smile in this film as well. You know, you've seen it on the various posters for this film where you have these characters doing this very sinister looking smile, and I was slightly worried at first seeing this that it was going to be a little bit too gimmicky. It reminded me at first of those trailers for that film Truth or Dare. Luckily I didn't see that one in the end because apparently the reviews said it was absolutely terrible, so I managed to miss it. But the smile they were doing in that film, it was more laugh-inducing than anything else, and I was slightly worried about that here if they were overusing it and it ended up looking too silly. But to be fair, in this film it's done extremely effectively. They use it sparingly throughout the film and they've picked their moments just right to use it, so it comes off as very scary looking. Some extremely good scares in this film. I was kind of expecting just mostly those jump scares, and there is a lot of those throughout the film, though a lot of them much better done than in other movies. But there was a few scenes that really caught me off guard. There's a particular scene later on in the film with Rose going into this hospital, and the way it's set up, you know something is coming, but what actually ends up happening, wow, it was actually very effective, really scary, and it set me on edge for the rest of the film after that. I was actually surprised by how much this threw me off. I was impressed as well that this film did not feel at all watered down. I was pretty surprised to see that it got that 18 rating here in the UK, which a lot of horror films don't get because, you know, it ruins the box office. You know, a lot of directors obviously end up, or the studio ends up cutting down these films just to make that 15 rating so they can end up making more money, selling more tickets. Whereas here it feels like whatever the director intended to be seen was actually shown on screen. They do not hold back with any of the violence and the graphic scenes in this film, and I do like that about it. There's something that really just irks me about films that it feels like something's been cut back just to get that rating down. And this is not the case with this film at all. It shows you everything, and it feels like it's absolutely the way it was made to be. I'm not really sure whether to talk about this as a positive or a negative for the film, but I found the experience overall quite punishing at times just because of how many jumps and scares and horrific scenes there are in this film. Literally, this is once it kicks off instantly. The opening scene, something big happens, and then from then on, this film does not let up. The entire 2 hours, there is no more than a 5-minute break between each of the kind of the frightening moments in this film, and I felt pretty drained by the end of it. I mean, it was going into the final act, and where they set that up to go, I was thinking, oh God, more of this. I was, I felt pretty knackered after seeing this, to be honest. And it was definitely having the effect that was intended. You know, it was getting a lot of screams out of the audience, a lot of people covering their face and holding their ears. So it was quite impressive in that sense, but it's certainly not a film that I'm going to be rushing out to get a second viewing at the cinema with. So there's a couple of side characters they introduce in this film that just didn't feel quite right to me. And that was the character of the boyfriend and also Rose's therapist. And I feel that their lack of understanding to her about anything that is going on was too unrealistic. The way these people were acting, it was genuinely hard to believe she could have ever had any connection with them prior to this. You know, you can understand that during the film, because she's the only one that you're seeing experiencing all this horrific stuff, that, you know, it would be difficult for them to believe certain elements, and they're trying to calm her down and maybe attribute it to past trauma in her life. But they're kind of very, very cold towards her very quickly on, and just seemingly don't want to deal with it. And it wasn't particularly convincing to me. I don't know if it was just the acting or the way these characters were written. And to be fair, I mean, most of the film is on Rose. You spend pretty much most of the runtime with her. But for the few scenes you get with these other characters, I didn't think they were entirely convincing. One negative I have with the film here, though, that I just can't ignore, is the amount of content they have taken from other films. We've seen the story 1,000 times before. You've got films such as The Grudge, The Ring, It Follows, films that all follow this storyline of having a character who usually witnesses something or sees this event happen, this shocking event happen, that leads to them being cursed. And then you go through their experiences, usually leading to their death. This film is no different to that. It's literally that exact same story all the way through again. And there's even a scene in this film towards the end that directly steals a scene from It Follows, almost down to a T. And it actually took me a little bit out of the scene seeing that, because I was just thinking as I was watching it, I was like, wow, they've actually directly copied the scare from It Follows here. It doesn't completely hurt the movie though. You know, they're all good ideas. There's a reason why this formula is used a lot of times in horror, because it is still effective. It's a good story to tell, and it works here very well as well. So I can forgive the film for that. But this is far from one of the more original horror films that we've seen for the past few years. Overall though, I must say I really enjoyed this film. It's well directed, it's a well-made film, it's got a great lead performance from the main actress, and it is absolutely chock full of really effective scares. So I think don't let those slightly generic trailers put you off from going to see this, and go and experience it on the big screen. I'm going to give this film a 3.5 out of 5 rating. I hope you enjoyed my review of this new horror film, Smile. I'll leave some cards here as well if you want to have a look at some of the other 2022 horror movies that I've reviewed this year. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed my video, and I'll see you next time.